who will accompany us in this space. Hilary Hanano is a General Secretary of the Research Data Alliance, RDA. Her responsibilities include the leadership of the RDA members and management of the RDA Foundation. RDA have a community of over 11,000 individuals and 16 organizations members for 145 countries around the world. Thanks for joining us. And to moderate this conversation, she is joining us Ruth Elena Cuatsiaput Canchala, an indigenous pastor for the Indigenous Reservoir Formales Nariño. He has degree in philosophy and language, English, is magister in cultural studies, and is currently PhD student and the Center of the Study of Higher Education at the University of Arizona, USA. She is a Fulbright Scholar for Indigenous Community, cohort 2023, and we thanks Viteca for our translation today. We welcome, thank for you attending our invitations.
Thank you very much, Joanna, and good morning, everyone. Welcome to this important conversation. As Joanna mentioned before, today we are going to be with Hilary Hanahu, learning more about the research data management. And Hilary has been to Colombia before, right? But unfortunately, we had to cancel her presentation in Colombia earlier when she was attending events in South America in person. But we did not want to miss the opportunity to have her with us and to learn about the Research Data Alliance, about this global alliance, about this global community. So thank you for joining us online at this time. As Joanna mentioned earlier, Hilary is the Secretary General of the Research Data Alliance since 2018, and her main responsibilities include leading RDA's membership, effectively managing the organization and its legal entity, engaging with RDA stakeholders and organizations, and ensuring the sustainable stewardship of a dynamic, active, and high-impact community. So, and also as Joanna mentioned before, our country is currently making significant efforts to make science and knowledge more accessible and democratic. And one of the most important recent initiatives is the Open Science National Policy, which was officially approved in 2022. And this policy includes several activities, efforts, and initiatives, and introduces the crucial responsibility of regulating Article 171 of Colombia's National Development Plan, which mandates democratizing science by providing access to results derived from publicly funded research. This initiative also involves dialogues and conversations, not only with academia, but also with diverse communities, organizations, and entities. So it is essential to learn extensively from other experiences, initiatives, and networks. This is why we are truly honored to have this conversation with you today, Hilary. So thank you so much again for being with us this morning and for being part of these webinars organized by the Colombian Scientific Information Network. And with this brief introduction and presentation, I would like to hand over to you, Hilary, so we can get to know the story of RDA, its central mission, its working groups, and how can Colombia get actively involved in this global community. So welcome, Hilary, and go ahead.
Thank you so much, Ruth. And first of all, good morning to you all. Buenos días. Thank you, Adriana, for helping me have a Spanish voice this morning, as I unfortunately do not speak your language. I do understand it a bit, but I don't speak it. So I apologize. And I'm grateful for the Ministry for facilitating the interpretation so that you can listen. Yes.
Excuse me, one moment, please, because the transmission in YouTube have your voice in English, and we need we need the Spanish. Yes? One moment, please.
No problem. Oh, I'm right over. Sure.
Víctor, por favor, ¿nos confirmas cuando la voz pueda salir en español? Gracias. Please continue. Thanks.
No worries. So thank you very much to the Minister. Thank you very much to the Ministry, of course, to Johanna and all her team for organising this, but also for welcoming me in April in Colombia. I had the wonderful opportunity to learn a lot about what is being done in Colombia around open science. So I'm excited to share with you today the different things that the Research Data Alliance is doing around open science and research data management. Before I start, of course, in the Research Data Alliance, we are very, how would you say, focused on the fact that we can build global bridges to enable local success. So, of course, when I talk about things on an international, global level, most of the time they are actually implementable and applicable to a local context, particularly in a case like Colombia, where the open science is a policy that is now published, approved, and, if you like, known to the stakeholders. So before I go into what the Research Data Alliance does towards open science, I'd just like to reflect with you for a few moments on some of the, if you like, overarching aspects of open science and how it is, of course, a global movement. As you can see from this image, which I took from the Ciencia Aperta from Concitec in Peru, and the concept here is, of course, if you see, there are many, many different taxonomies and elements to open science. And that can be sometimes a little worrying, a little disconcerting, and a little confusing and looks complex. But I think I prefer to use this image, which was kindly developed by the Young European Research Universities Network, of thinking of open science as a very big tree, as a tree with roots that are very fundamentally inserted in the ground, yes, with a whole series of different parts to that tree, of course. And the more we nurture and care for the open science tree, the stronger and the better it will get for all of us who wish to work and, if you like, take advantage of it. In the Colombian context, of course, it's very, where does open science come in? Well, as we heard from Ruth in the beginning about the different articles and resolutions, but I particularly took, if you like, focused on this piece of text that I found where it says that we should make data, procedures, and intermediate elements that are communicable and potentially useful to other researchers, available to the state and to other researchers, yes? So open science, of course, and good research data management will very much help to achieve this vision and this part of your open science policy. So what is research data management? That in itself deserves not just a webinar, but a training course. But in a high level, yes, research data management is, of course, the active and ongoing management of data throughout the whole life cycle. From the start, if you like, of the research work to the end and the dissemination, the publication of the results. But as you can see from these two images, one a little more high level and simplistic, and another one much more complex. But the concept here is that it's always cyclical. It's not a process that has a start and an end, and then you move on. Research data management is really an active and ongoing process. And there are many, many examples. I will show you some as we go through the presentation that the Research Data Alliance community have produced. But research data management is, of course, fundamental to the achievement of open science. When I came to, I spent 5 weeks in total in Latin America between April and May. And when I met with many, many stakeholders, I did ask how many of them were familiar with the FAIR concept. So this four-letter F word, which stands for findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. FAIR is a more, I suppose, well, it's in 2016, the FAIR principles were published and have become very popular. So the wording is really from that time, less than 10 years ago. However, the work around research data management and open science is always really encapsulated in these four concepts or pillars. And FAIR things means that we don't actually only talk about data, but we talk about hardware and software and anything really that contributes to the part of research data management. So that's why you see FAIR things there. When the FAIR principles were coined, as I said, in 2016, the Research Data Alliance had a group at that time for Indigenous data sovereignty. And they were meeting to discuss the different aspects of Indigenous data sovereignty. And of course, the FAIR principles, as you see in this image, findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable, were valuable, but they did cause some concern for Indigenous data governance. And so particularly in 2018, the CARE principles were actually coined. And we're pleased to say that RDA had some part in that. But the CARE principles are really particularly important, of course, for Indigenous data. And they stand for that there's a collective benefit to the data or the FAIR things, that there should be a very clear authority to control, that there's a responsibility and an ethics also aspect to it. And I would invite you to go and have a look at the Global Indigenous Data Alliance for more information on the CARE with particular reference to Indigenous data. But I think that if you learn a little more about the CARE principles, you may agree that actually we should be grateful to the Indigenous Alliance for coining them, but actually they can be applied and should be applied to a lot of different types of data, yes? And so they are very important principles that we're grateful to the Indigenous populations for and their work around that. So you may say to me, well, what's that got to do with me? Why should we care about these concepts? That's, very high level. FAIR is something somebody else will worry about, or good research data management, someone else can do it. But I wouldn't agree. anybody who's involved in research has a role to play here in increasing the pace of knowledge, yes, and the discoveries that we can make and the scientific progress. You think about climate change that everybody is experiencing now. A lot of research could be so valuable to predictions and forecasting and finding different measures if we were able to share that data in the correct and structured way. We also, it's very important to reduce the duplication of efforts and silos, to be able to build on existing work or to take a fruit of it, yes, and not to be reinventing the wheel if such work exists. There are many resources, yeah, invested in the creation of data, in experimentation, in publications, even in cataloging and archives. And if you can learn from each other and share experiences, there's a huge time and financial resource saving to be had. And in many cases, just like we've heard now, there are national requirements, policies, and also sometimes institutional ones that should be adhered to. So, of course, by supporting open science, we can adhere to these principles as well as doing the right thing. I would state that we often say, people say, oh, but it's so technologically challenging. I would argue, and I think many of my colleagues in the Research Data Alliance would argue, that actually we're very lucky in this particular era that we live in. We have a lot of technology and technological prospects at our fingers. So often it's a cultural barrier that we really need to overcome. Many times, and this is a very interesting blog from the London School of Economics about what these cultural barriers may be. Well, sometimes you would hear the top three are that, it's not a common in my practice, in my field. We know, for example, that astronomers are very often big data sharers, or they make data accessible and they share it a lot. Others say that they prefer to ask for the data. That's doable. But how will someone find it if you don't know, if it's not structured and made available? Yes. And also remember that when we talk about opening data or making data available or findable, it's not that's within the confines of what is correct and legally right for the data we are talking about. So as we say, as closed or as open as possible and as closed as necessary. But you can still make data fair, even if it's health data, for example, which has complexities around the sharing of that data. And of course, the third one is that it can be time consuming to prepare the data. That is in some ways true, which is why we need to work on promoting and helping to have tools and resources and trainings so that we can actually make data sharing and data structuring and data, if you like, formatting much easier and more simple for those that should be doing it. So what does the Research Data Alliance do to help all of this? Well, the Research Data Alliance celebrated 10 years last year in 2023. So we were launched in 2013. And it is an organization that was conceived by funders from across the globe with the idea that actually it's the community, all the stakeholders, be they librarians, infrastructure managers, computer scientists, academic infrastructure managers, you name, publishers, that actually those people would be the best to understand how we could overcome these challenges and build the bridges to help realize this vision of better research data management and open science. So we created the Research Data Alliance as a global community-driven initiative. Now, the Research Data Alliance has a very ambitious vision, not inachievable, I say, but it is ambitious. And that is, as you see here, that researchers and innovators can openly share and reuse data across technologies, across disciplines, and across countries to address the grand challenges of society. And those three underlined words are the most important, because the Research Data Alliance looks at any type of technology, so all are welcome, all things. Very important is all scientific disciplines and domains, as well as domain agnostic, and every country. So the idea is that collectively, together, working together on different small, if you like, challenges, we can help to improve the research data management. So how do they do that? Well, the mission we have to achieve this vision is to build both the social and the technical bridges. And I will show you examples of the technical bridges, some of them in a little bit. But I would like just to stop for one moment and tell you about the social aspect, because the social part for RDA is equally as important. We strive to create a global network to allow people understand who is working, to be open in the way we work, so that people can connect with each other and work together in RDA or bilaterally. But the building the social bridges between different types of stakeholders that normally would not have the opportunity to interact has proved to be really impactful. It creates trust, but it also creates a very important knowledge sharing and communication aspect. But this slide is perhaps one of the most important, I always say in my presentations, because we are built on these 6 fundamental guiding principles. And it's very important. Everything we do is open. Everything that the community does is driven by consensus, and consensus sometimes can be harder to achieve, but it is more important because that is the collective, if you like, view, and that's what we're aiming for. Open solutions, open products that have been built by the community and for the community. We, of course, strive for inclusivity, and I laugh a little at this one, though there's nothing to laugh about. But inclusive also means not just in terms of gender and race, and geographical areas, but actually always linguistically. And as you can see, we are here looking at a screen in my language, or the working language of RDA as well. And we appreciate that we need to support the multilingual aspect of the work, of the community work, but we should be inclusive. It is, as I said before, community driven. So it's the community that decide what are the different topics that they want to work on, and we facilitate by providing the framework. Everything in RDA is not for profit and technology neutral. And that means that all the solutions, be they get best practices, standards, APIs, they should be made available so that they can be taken up and implemented by others. So technology, no technology lock-in, yes, at the source of making them available. If then they are built on by organizations to create solutions, that's okay. But the output of RDA should be accessible to all. And the last one is harmonization. And I'm going to give an example of that, actually, because it puts it better into context. So in data repositories, right? Data repositories, where will the data reside? How can the data be, if you like, stored and preserved and curated? Well, in 2016, there were 2 different, if you like, checklists or for a certified or a trustworthy data repository. One was managed by the World Data System, WDS, and the other was managed by the Data Seal of Approval, DSA. And they were similar, but not quite the same. And this was a little confusing for data repository managers or those investigating setting them up. Well, which one is better for me? Why should I choose this? And under the umbrella of the Research Data Alliance, they came together to create one checklist and for certifying and identifying trustworthy data repositories called the Core Trust Seal. And that's an example of harmonization. Why? Because they reduced the number of standards in the world by one and made life simpler for the community. So that's a concrete example from RDA, and a little like the Global Indigenous Data Alliance, we are really proud that the Core Trust Seal is another organization that had its start, if you like, under the Research Data Alliance umbrella. So who is involved in the Research Data Alliance? I like to refer to it as a family, because there are three very important components of this family. Over 14,000 individuals from 151 countries across the globe. And they are, if you like, the soldiers, the people who provide their ideas, who work together mainly virtually with colleagues and peers across the globe to come up with these best practices and their outputs. So they're a very important part of our family, of course. But we also have organizations, and the organizational pillar is important for many reasons. One, of course, is that we are funded, we get support, financial support from organizations. But actually what's more important is that an organization is really who is going to take the product from RDA and implement it. Yes, so they are important because we need to understand the organizational perspective on the research data management and on the solutions. And then the third, but in no way less important component of our family are nations, or as we refer to them in RDA as regions, so countries, if you like. And why are they important? Well, like today, if I did not have a connection with Colombia to understand what's happening in Colombia, to reach to the speak with the stakeholders and interact, yes, it's not possible for me and my staff of 3 to do that. We need connections and people on the ground to share with us what your challenges are, but also what are your excellences, so others can learn from you. We need people on the ground to help people to get involved together in the work, and to raise, to highlight a selection perhaps of the many RDA activities that are of relevance to you. And of course, there's the linguistic aspect. So what are the, how do we work in RDA? Well, we work, the heart, if you like, of RDA is through these 3 mechanisms, okay? I don't need to go into them in detail. I just want to show you that depending on the type of activity, we have 3 different ways in which the community mainly do their work. The first is the working groups, and they have a specific lifetime, and when their work is done, they stop. The interest groups are much broader, more discussion groups and forums that we have. And then we have communities of practice, which are focused for the moment on disciplinary areas. And our community of practice now is the agricultural data one. So these are the 3 mechanisms, if you like, the structures in which the community can work and advance this ambition and vision to find these solutions so that we can share and reuse data. So I'll give you a couple of quick examples. This is actually an output, recommendations and guidelines on data sharing in COVID. And you can see that there are 4 disciplinary areas that were covered: clinical, omics, epidemiology, and social sciences, and then these more transversal areas. But what's important about this example is that this was a community effort done in a very short time that had a concrete impact, because it gave guidelines on how to share COVID-19 data during the pandemic, so that we could help to accelerate, if you like, the work that many people across the globe were doing in terms of therapy and vaccines and things. And they came up with some recommendations, but it's just to show you. So that's a concrete example of working in the community. The next one is how, so we have a partner in Australia, the Australian Research Data Commons. So it's an organization responsible, if you like, for providing services and supporting data management across Australia and with all the different research infrastructures and academic organizations. And they have, of course, there are big telescopes and big instruments, right? If you think of big pieces of hardware, microscopes in Australia. And they worked in a big group, a global group in RDA, looking for persistent identifiers for instruments. So persistent identifiers, you can think of them like passports for an instrument, yes, so that we can identify also not just the data that the instrument has collected and produced, but also the instrument itself, right? And what they did was they created a whole model in Australia, but they also gave back to the global community the lessons that they learned and shared by adopting these outputs. So this is how the community works in a two-way fashion. Another example, which I really like, is if you look there, the 23 things for libraries for research data. That screenshot there is a very simple 2-page PDF document that has been translated in 14 languages, but where it was a very high-level document to support librarians and information managers working in libraries to start to orient themselves around research data and the management of digital data and digital artifacts in a time before where they were mainly responsible, if you like, for more hard copy collections. But in Australia, again, another example from there, but as it happens, they took this 2-page document and they created an online training course for the librarians and the information managers. And over 3,000 people were able to do this course online from the comfort of their office or their own home, and to learn about libraries for research data. So another really important, if you like, output from the RDA community, and then implemented, if you like, in a national context. So there are many other outputs. Well, from RDA, we have lots and lots, hundreds. But this one here, I just wanted to show you, if you see a screenshot of empowering child health, I found that RDA, in fact, they took this fair data maturity model, which is a guidelines around how to assess the maturity of data with respect to those 4 FAIR principles. And they used this model to assess some of the research data in their experiments. So we were able to contribute to a published and important publication. And the last example I will show is about these research commons. So research commons are becoming more popular idea. They're often referred to as science clouds or science commons. But they are really a common space, mostly virtual, can be federated, where researchers and scientists and other stakeholders would be able to access certain tools, certain resources, certain other activities that they can do. And they are working on, as there are many of these taking place all over the world, and some are much more advanced than others, but they spend time together to help those who will also face this challenge of setting something up. in a domain context or a national context. And they are sharing and coming up with this set of common elements. So if someone was saying, oh, I need to set one of these up, then they've already provided a checklist so people can have a look and see. And that's an example of reducing the duplication of efforts. Because of course you'd have to set up the commons and do a lot of work. But if somebody can share the good and the bad practices, well, isn't that great? So how does the Research Data Alliance community work? Well, we have plenary meetings every year. We've just finished an online one, so we do a fully virtual online meeting in the first 6 months of the year, and in the second 6 months of the year, calendar year, we have a hybrid, so in person and online. But what they are for us, we call them plenary meetings because we get the community together. They're working meetings to advance the work, but also an opportunity for new members to come and learn more and get involved in RDA, because we do appreciate that RDA is, because as I said, all technologies, all disciplines, all countries, it can be, and all the different nuances of that open science, very complex tree we should grow. We understand that they're hard to navigate. So we do provide some support in terms of try to help, people navigate. But one of the best ways actually is to come to the meeting, and they're a very, very friendly community. The next opportunity is not so far from you, actually. We will be having our next plenary meeting in November this year in Costa Rica. And of course, it will be online. So if you weren't able to actually physically attend, you could also interact. We try and make them as interactive as possible with people, if you like, and it's in, well, yes, almost a similar time zone, so much easier, not in the middle of the night. Through the event platform, we also provide all the recordings after the meeting. So there's a chance as well to get involved. But I would encourage you to have a look at that. The one after that, of course, is in Australia as one of our partners, and it will be within the framework of International Data Week. A couple of words before I finish about how is RDA and what's its footprint in Latin America? Well, it's rather sad, unfortunately, if I were to say to you that actually less than 5% of our members are in the Latin American Caribbean continent. So less than 700. And that we understand, we've never invested like I am now, and we have a strategy towards trying to improve this in disseminating and work and identifying partners like Johanna and our team and the ministry who can help to ensure that the best can be taken from the Research Data Alliance. So we need to improve our footprint. And one of my big takeaways, as I said before, after my 9-country, 5-week tour, is of course we need to facilitate the linguistic aspect. So please be patient, and we will. So the last thing is, okay, I hope you're interested. I hope you think you might like to at least explore RDA. Joining as an individual member is completely free of charge. Everything is open, but if you were to join and you say you abide by the guiding principles, you can receive the updates, you can get involved, you can see when, know when the meetings are happening, and maybe get involved in some of the areas that are of interest to you, follow the groups. So you are encouraged to go to the web platform and to create an account and join as an individual member if you would like to do so. I'd like to just spend 1 minute saying some people get frightened when I say, oh, join and become a member. What will I have to do? If I were to try to explain or show you visually the membership of RDA, and I said over 14,000, if you think of it as a pyramid, where at the top we have drivers, so conductor. They're a very small portion. They're people who are on our governance boards, people who are driving the groups, okay? And then we have a slightly larger layer of contributors, who they're like collaborators. So they are trying to, if you like, maybe they're working, coming to events, they are getting involved in the groups, but maybe not driving them. And then the biggest group underneath are the observers. And they are also welcome. They are people who are interested, they're looking for their way in maybe, or they just want to take the information that's there. All are welcome. You can be active or you can be passive in RDA. But what I will tell you is that the more you give is the more you obviously get. Yes. And what I would like to also, before I finish, this is my second last slide, is to show you, as you can see, these are images of different bridges in different places for different reasons, right? They, depending on what traffic or what river they need to, or part of the land that they need to span and allow us to go across, they are different. And that's what we are doing. We're not building a research, an open science solution one. We're building and helping to build these little nuts and bolts for the bridges so that we can actually work together as long in our own contexts and in our own libraries, research institutions, etc., etc. And as we say in RDA, if you want to go fast, well, go ahead and go alone. But if you want to go far, it's very important to go together. And that is what the Research Data Alliance does. People work together, to collaborate together, and to, if you like, find the solutions, but also contribute to this bigger picture of open science and research data management. So I would like to thank you for your attention. And if there are any questions, I'm delighted to answer. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hilary, for this insightful presentation, for sharing with us all these details, the history and the context of the RDA Foundation and how the working groups are conformed, and how like we as individuals as well as researchers can join and contribute to the RDA, either in a working group or as individuals too. So thank you so much for that. It really is really helpful and informative for the ministry as well as for the researchers interested in data opening. So we have some questions from our audience that I would like to share with you here. And one of the first questions we found in our chat is related to the way in which working groups work, specifically talking about like what is the methodology, or if we as individuals join the working teams, do these working teams share methodologies, for example, for analyzing the data? Do they share, or can code repositories be shared where they perform the analysis and or alerts of potential risk of misuse of the data or interpretations of data? Or how is the work within the working groups regarding to sharing perhaps codes for repositories, sharing other methodologies? So how open are those groups to sharing that?
Well, thanks for that question. A long, complex one, but well, the answer should be simple, but I say should because, as I showed at the beginning, the one of our fundamental principles is openness, and that means that also the group, not just at the beginning of the group or at the end of the group when the output is produced, but actually throughout the group's lifetime, the methods of working and interaction should be open. Now, each group is different, and we have I think it's just under 50 working groups active at the moment, depending on the focus. Of course, they may have a different way, but they are required to to make things open. That each group has a space on the web platform where, if they're not using the web platform to interact, which is sometimes possible, there should be very clear links to where they are conducting their work through Google, when they're having their meetings, etc., and also where the development work is. So that is the principle. If somebody identifies a barrier to that, please let me know. We do try to ensure that doesn't happen, but remember, there's over 100 active groups, and we're not very many people. We have a wonderful technical advisory board, but they're volunteers. Yeah, so a lot is on the volunteer work in RDA.
And following that question, is it possible to start a new working group, and what could be the recommendations to conform a new working group and to join the RDA?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking that, because it's always a hard one to explain. There's so many things to say about RDA. I have to make a choose, but that's really important. We have two ways. I talked about the plenary meetings, I think, and I showed, of course, that we have the working groups, the interest groups, and the thing, and they are how the plenary meeting activities, if you like, are structured. But there's one opportunity, if you like, and we call them birds of a feather, BOFs, B-O-F, because birds of a feather, they flock together is the concept. And a BOF is a possibility to propose a session where there's an idea about working together on something, but you want to test to see if there's, interest in the community, others who are doing something, and you could join forces, etc. So that's the way. One mechanism is through the actual plenary meetings. And you saw that there's an opportunity in Costa Rica. But if we're only having them twice a year, that's still a little not enough. So we also encourage the proposal of groups through the Secretariat. We can help to, defund or disseminate and call the community on areas of interest. If then the people get together on forming a group, then it starts through the more formal process. So we have these two mechanisms. One thing I will say is RDA is global, okay? That is what the value of RDA is, the fact that we are global. So we must always have at least 2 continents represented in a working group or an interest group for it to be viable. At the idea stage, birds of a feather, or as I said, through the thing, it can just be one person or a group of people, even from if you like, a faculty or in one academic organization. So it's okay to do it from there, and then, but if the idea is find global partners, and then we can propose and support it. I hope that's clear.
Yeah, it is. Thank you so much. And one of the main objectives of having you here, having this conversation with you, is specifically also to have these slides about how to get Colombia more involved in this global initiative and be part of these initiatives. So what would be some recommendations from you to the ministry or to other institutions in Colombia to promote the involvement of Colombia as individuals, as an academic community in the RDA?
Thanks. So I suppose, they would be different recommendations. First of all, I believe it really is a global resource. It's an excellent resource, because everybody is striving to work on open science now, some at different levels of development or progress than others, and that's truth all over the world. It's not different in what part of the hemisphere or you're in. But of course, again, by sharing and getting involved or identifying existing solutions that can speed things up and help. I showed that example at the very beginning of open science, and it's really quite complex. It is, I know, but nobody's alone in it. This is a global organization of people who really believe. So that's the thing. The majority of them believe that by working together and sharing, we can actually achieve something. So you find, if you like, a tribe there. So individuals, it is hard. We understand, and we are making big efforts now to try. We've launched a new website, which is causing a few problems still, but we're hoping it will actually help to identify people and to identify solutions, first of all. We want to make everything much more multilingual. And my ask, I suppose, and hope with the ministry in Colombia is that we can work closer together, if you like, on a more coordinating level, so that we can, if you like, identify where Colombia could take benefit from RDA, but also, I go back again to say, where the rest of the world can get advantage from things that are happening in Colombia, in Latin America as a whole. I saw, I mean, I know that there's, you know, so much going on in Latin America. We have not provided the linguistic access to it, or even the, you know, the direct canal. So with Johanna and her team, the discussion is to see if we can identify this point of contact in a way that would translate resources, as I said, highlight, like they're simple enough steps, but they could be so powerful if we were, and we will. The other is, of course, organizations. I believe that organizations like academics, we have a pilot project. I didn't show the slides, but I'm very happy to be contacted about it, where organizations could come and join our organizational assembly, so the universities that are, to understand the organizational perspective of RDA, yeah, which is different. So that's why I talk about those three pillars, because they are different ways of interacting, but equally as important. So this pilot is a free, again, for them to come, and we ask, and so we can also understand how we can make RDA more inclusive, more accessible.
Thank you again. And I like when you said more coordinated, because as you know, we in Colombia, our current context is focused on implementing our open science policy. And the ministry, through this Colombian Scientific Information Network, is also like leading these conversations with local communities, with regional communities, with organizations, different entities, because as you said before, at a global level, but this is like a more country level, we also need to have different conversations and find and know the needs and interests on our local communities. But I would like, in that sense, to ask if, or what will be your recommendations to advance in this implementation of the national open science policy, especially in the open research data component for our country?
I suppose if, well, on a national level, so if you're asking me, you know, what could be, I fully believe, I mean, every context is different, yes, and I learned that very much when I visited your wonderful continent, that you know, every country has a different, if you like, way of approaching things, and that I'm a big believer in collaboration, communication, cooperation. Particularly, I feel that if you do really believe in open science, then, you know, and open research data, then that's a really good, you know, concept to start with. I've seen in other countries like a mini RDA, even, if you like. So the creation of community groups, because remember that while the ministry is rightly so trying to implement and support the implementation of what is a national policy, yeah, so if you like, a more top-down activity, which is very important, finding a way to actually get the community on the ground to support so that you meet each other. Yeah. So that could be, I don't know, discussion fora, or, national level working groups or activities or events focusing on different topics and themes. And of course, a view and an eye on what's going on in your neighboring countries, in the Americas, in the world, is really important too. But of course, I can say nothing but collaboration, because that is what I have seen, honestly have seen. I'm 6 years in this role, but I've worked with RDA since before it was launched in a different capacity. And it's a little slow. It's not as fast, like I said, but it really is valuable. Yeah, it's a really valuable way of working together.
Yeah, I can see that, because I had the opportunity also to know and to learn about, for example, this consensus on the CARE principles. And I appreciate the work that the ministry is doing now in Colombia, which is like come to the communities, include the communities into this conversation, which is very important. And in certain ways, it's kind of new for our indigenous peoples in Colombia too, like to get to know about this global initiative regarding indigenous data. This was something new for me too. So, but having these conversations is really important, because as I said in a previous conversation I had with the ministry, indigenous people are not like foreigners with data and data stewardship. So we need to have this conversation, and we need to build this bridge with the ministry, local communities, and the information that we are going to share. So I guess it's like in a national level, same context, and in an international level, even more of this context. So thank you so much.
Yeah. No, it's 1 minute on that, because there's a big conference this year, in Brisbane, right? It's called the International Conference on Research Infrastructures. They are big research facilities which do many things, including manage data. But I'm so pleased. I'm a member of the program committee, but I'm so pleased to see that there is a big, very important spotlight on Indigenous data and Indigenous knowledge and Indigenous research infrastructures by design, if you like. And I don't think that was the case before. And I have seen what the Global Indigenous Data Alliance effect it had, yeah, and the CARE principles. So I'm a big fan, but it's a really good example of, important work that sometimes people, don't realize, but those CARE principles are really fundamental.
And this was one of the working groups that joined the RDA, yes. Right?
An interest group, actually. It still exists, but it's Indigenous data sovereignty. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, let me, because we have just got some questions. So let me just check some questions here. Okay, one of those questions we have here is, what path should a higher education institution follow to establish its first open science repository that ensures excellent interoperability? Perhaps if some recommendations can come up.
Okay. Yeah, complex that, but so
yes.
I would point to, first of all, we don't provide, if you like, an A to Z, how would you say, pathway for that. Yeah, because as I said, we are building the nuts and the bolts so that the bridge, whereas here we're talking about a bridge that they need to build. I would point, and I can provide the resource afterwards, if you will share the slides, then I can put it in a different set. But there's a very good framework that helps to start to orient and to understand what are the different components by the NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology in the US, but it's open to all, and it's called the Research Data Framework. And it's like if you a checklist of different things that need to be done. We would have some of the the smaller parts inside that, or RDA would have solutions for it. But if someone's looking for a blueprint, then I would suggest going there.
Thank you. Yeah, I also believe every university inside its administration and all these decision making that are happening inside universities are also a part of this open science policy that can be implemented, and how repositories can also be implemented within universities. So yeah, I understand it's very complex to give an answer, give a concrete answer.
But I would also, if I may, point people to La Referencia, which is, of course, the network that have coordinated and with whom I interact. And of course, Johanna and the ministry are the Colombian representatives there. But they also, because I discovered that there are so many excellent examples of implementation and the design of data infrastructures and data repositories in universities in Latin America. But of course, it's about finding that information. The University of Rosario have, in Argentina, I saw it, yes, but there are many, many more. I know the Javeriana University there in Colombia are also doing things. So I think that's part of it, is the challenge, right, of knowing where to go. We hope to help a little bit with that, and I'm sure the ministry will as well, but finding out who's doing it and who can help us.
Yeah. I'm glad that you mentioned that, because that is also true, and it's a great recommendation for us to follow these examples. And we also have a comment and a question from another attendee, which is, well, thanks for the great talk. I am a Colombian working as a data steward at a national research infrastructure in Sweden. My question is, what is the plan of RDA to extend reach in Latin America? So we would like to know more about this strategy plan for South America or Latin America.
Okay. So as I mentioned, we have a 5-year strategic plan for which as I said, we have less than 5% of our members are in Latin America, in that whole continent. And that's shameful, yes, on our part, because we have never dedicated, we didn't have the resources, by the way. We're a very small organization, and yet, have to work a lot. So we made a conscious investment. The first part of that investment was for me to meet and make the connections face-to-face with the different, in the 9 country members of La Referencia that I visited. We are hoping to create one-to-one relationships with the country and the countries and some of the organizations in those countries, if they wish, with the hope, of course, that we can therefore have more Latin Americans involved and benefiting from RDA, right? But on top of that, we want to strengthen our partnership with La Referencia as, if you like, an overarching coordination, I suppose, in Latin America, so that in a way, those one-to-one relationships, we have a similar model, by the way, in Europe, are direct, but that we can also there avoid duplicating efforts. So, for example, with Colombia, if they are interested in a certain part of the outputs and translating those, or focusing webinars in Spanish on those, then we could share that with the other Spanish-speaking countries, yes? And the other Spanish-speaking countries could do other ones, so that we could enrich as much as possible our, if you like, resources in the language and of what is of benefit. But we also want to hear what is happening in Latin America and elevate that on the global scale, as well as what's happening in Colombia, right? So we want to provide, we applied for funding through SCOS, and we have received small pledges at the moment. With that pledge, we will be identifying small resources. That's a start, though, to try and have actually a Spanish-speaking person who can do, if you like, and support La Referencia and the members to do this. So they're the concrete actions that we have at the moment, for which I hope, and we will see. But I had a very positive, if you like, visits, and understanding that there's great interest for us to work together.
That sounds like a great plan. Oh.
No, I just want to add one thing, is that, we are a self-sustained organization, but part of our strategy is that we wish for this, if you like, we were not asking for a financial contribution from our Latin American partners at the moment, quite the opposite. Also remember, because people ask me this, but also remember that what I said at the end, you give as much, you get as much as you give. So any partnership is not actually free, in the sense that, of course, with the ministry and Colombia and organizations, if the effort that a person on their side would invest is a huge value to the global community. Yeah. So let it not be thought that this is, a sort of a, I don't know, charity. It's quite the opposite. It's a really, I think, valuable exchange that we could have with Latin America.
Thank you so much for that. And yeah, as you said before too, the ministry is very doing the work. So we appreciate all these new initiatives, these new collaborations, and these new ties that are being built among organizations and other countries and universities. So thank you again for sharing your insights and the valuable work of the Research Data Alliance. Certainly your explanations on how RDA's initiatives can benefit the Colombian research community and support our open science national policy have been very, very enlightening. So thank you. We are very, very grateful for this opportunity to learn more about how to get involved in this global community and how can we enhance our collaborative efforts. So your presence today has been invaluable, and we look forward to fostering stronger connections between RDA and our local researchers as well as institutions. And also thank you to all of our attendees. Thank you for joining us today. We hope this session has provided you with a deeper understanding of the RDA and the opportunities it presents for advancing scientific research in Colombia. So let's continue to engage, collaborate, and drive forward the mission of making science more accessible and democratic, as I mentioned at the beginning. And thank you once again, Hilary, and thank you all for being part of this important conversation, and have a great day.
Gracias.